We now have our Cybersecurity Career Pathways panel, where we'll be discussing a day in the life of a cyber professional. Now, joining me on the panel is Thomas Crane from Pen 10. He's a programmer, AI programmer with Pen 10. Nicole Franks is the Chief Operating Officer at Fifth Domain. We've also got Stuart Coulson, who is joining us remotely. He is the General Manager at CDFS. And we've also got, last but not least, Wing Commander Paul Pettigrew, who has recently rejoined the Australian Defence Force as Deputy Director, Joint Cyber Information Warfare Division. Thank you so much for joining me, everyone. And what I'll do is I'll throw it to you all to introduce yourselves and then perhaps tell us what attracted you to a career in cybersecurity. And maybe we'll start with Stuart, because you're remote. We'll start with yourself.
Thank you, Mina. So what attracted me to a career in cybersecurity? I've got an extensive background of around 35 years in IT. Started about 1985. It was out of necessity that I had a business at the time, and I was networking that business and creating a system that I could use that would benefit the staff and the clients I had at the time. What I found were a lot of the businesses around me didn't have a similar sort of capability, so they reached out and asked for some assistance. So I set up a business, initially just buying and selling computers, IT equipment, but quickly found there was a reason to implement them and find solutions that help the clients. Very early on, I was asked, what about security? Well, being keen and very young at the time, I raced around and looked at all the options, did the research, come back with a quote for the client. And he said, no, I wasn't after that kind of security. I just want to put it in a case so nobody pinches it because it's expensive. So that was a kind of inroads into security and a realization I need to pay better attention to my customers. So thankfully, that was 1985. I've had a lot of years since then to understand that I've got to listen to my customer and put the customer at the front of things. Since then, I've been across a number of departments. I started with Australian Customs Service, initially as a frontline officer, but then moved quickly into the IT area. Following that, I went to Queensland Police, which was really my introduction to digital forensics. And I've spent the last 20 years in digital forensics. So like I said, 35 years in IT, and 20 of that in digital forensics. With the ATO for 15 years, building a whole of government service. So when it comes back to the question of what really enticed me into cybersecurity, it was that doing digital forensics, which is the capture of electronic evidence for matters which could be cyber matters, so it could be network forensics looking for intrusions, but also crime scenes as well. So my normal day at CDFS can just be sitting in front of a computer as I am today, or it can be out on site, it can be at a crime scene, it can be exciting, it can be unusual. There isn't a normal day in my life. At CDFS, we do cyber work, we do digital forensics work, and all the training and secure data recovery. So whatever you can imagine across the whole cyber gamut of things. I'm realising I'm probably taking all the time, so I just pass to another member of the panel to give more information.
Thanks, Stuart. And that was a great comment. There is not a normal day in my life. Me too. And that's just as a parent. All right, we'll move on to Nicole. Perhaps, Nicole, if you could give us a general breakdown of what brought you into the sector.
Beautiful. Nowhere near as exciting as Stuart, who gets to play with forensics and all sorts of exciting things like that. I fell into an IT career about 17 years ago and ended up in cybersecurity because I'm a very risk-averse person by nature. My organisation was running a large and aggressive digitalisation program, and I felt that there was a risk for our sensitive customer data there. So I ended up becoming a cybersecurity program manager to bring in the people, process and technology that we needed to protect that data and keep up with the speed that the digitalisation program was progressing with. I ended up with Fifth Domain as their Chief Operating Officer because when I was building that program, I was lucky enough to get a lot of money to fund it. Good $60 million over 2 years, but I found it really hard to bring the people in and get the skills that I needed to build that up. So I had to build in some of those skills as we went. So it seemed like a good transition to go over to a place like Fifth Domain where we have that training platform to help skill people up. was what we needed.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nicole. And we'll move on to Tom. Tom Crane is from Pen10. Tom, if you could just tell us a little bit about how you came into the sector and how you joined Pen10.
Yeah, absolutely. So my interest in cyber actually started a really long time ago. I used to go to JCar with my dad and we'd pick up some circuit kits and I'd take those home and I'd have a wonderful time playing around with that. I think I've always had a really keen interest to just really find out how things work under the hood. And so it's no surprise that when I started using the computer, I got straight into programming. I was really interested to understand how some of those more complex systems work. And I think cyber is just, particularly cybersecurity, it just amazes me to see some of the most intricate ways that people interact with things, and they'll come up with these pathways that you just never think of for all of these exploits. And it's just, the ingenuity that you see in that sector is just so incredible. And so having the sort of creative upbringing that I had, that was just a natural path for me to follow. A few years ago when I was a bit younger, I did a bit of experimenting with game hacking. So I was sort of playing for the other team for a bit, but that was such an incredible introduction to just seeing how some of that stuff works. I looked into networking things, seeing, really digging into how the internet works, how games interact with them in particular. And now I'm working for Pen10, so playing for the good guys again. So we work with a whole range of stuff. We've got hardware, software, machine learning. If it's a modern technology, then we're using it at Pen10, and I'm working with probably some of the smartest guys in Canberra, I'd say anyway, just on some incredible stuff.
That's fantastic. It's quite interesting you talking about, playing on the other side, because the only way you get to understand the other side's psychology is by being there yourself at some point. So it's really great to have that diversity of thought. Now my next panellist is Wing Commander Paul Pettigrew.
Exactly.
And I like that, Wing Commander. It sounds really awesome. Now, what brought you back to the ADF, and why cyber in particular?
Well, cyber's cool to start with, but it's also very serious. So that's probably the short answer to your question. Some great experience here from across Michelle, Stuart and Tom, and it sort of really underlines to me the breadth of what cyber means these days. Right? So I guess my particular pathway started probably similar vintage to you, Stuart, 1985, writing my first programs on cardboard cards with pencil and feeding them into the card reader. So I've sort of been across software ever since then. And initially, so Mina said I've come back to the Air Force. And again, this is a part of the pathways in and through cyber. So originally I was a pilot, F-18s, so I flew Hornets and instructed on those for 12 years. And through that, also was, when I wasn't flying, was progressing on military projects. So command and control systems, navigation, planning systems, and took that skill out into the commercial workforce and worked in defence industry for 5 or 6 years, and then started and ran my own company, which I successfully built up. And in the last year or two, I've really had a calling to come back and provide some national service again, because this is the serious aspect. Okay, cybersecurity is very serious for our nation and for all of us, right down to a personal level. And the national security of our cyberspace is a very important mission that I'm absolutely committed to. So hence, I've been recruited back into defence with a uniform back on, and very happy for the opportunity to serve in that regard. And I'm looking forward to going through some of the details on the ADF Cyber Gap program, which is one of my activities, to this audience.
Wonderful. And Paul, if I could just get you to say a few words about the Cyber Gap program that Anthony also touched on.
Yes, yeah. So the ADF Cyber Gap program is an initiative from government. It's a program that's running over 3.5 years, so over the next 3 subsequent calendar years as it's running. We currently have a pilot program going of just under 50 people, and we're ramping up now to 250 more people starting through the next calendar year, and then 250 each of the 2 years following that. So we're looking to actually provide major support to 800 people to further their studies and progress the development, basically, of the national cyber workforce. So whilst there's definitely a focus and a desire for people to join the ADF from that, we've basically set it up so that if in the first instance it doesn't make sense for them to apply to a uniform position in the military, perhaps they might like to work with the Australian Public Service or the Defence APS or the wider APS or defence industry, or even just out into industry. So it is a very strategic program in that regard, in that the government has really signalled quite clearly that's the way we'd like you to run the program, and support people from all of those demographics as they transition into cyber or begin their cyber journey straight from a postgraduate level.
Wonderful. And Tom, if I can come back to you, you came into Pen 10 through the partnership with the University of Canberra. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you went about, getting your role at Pen 10 through UC?
So I actually got introduced to Pen 10 not through UC, but through one of my relatives who was working with Pen 10 at the time. And so, they put in a good word for me. Pen 10 was recruiting at the time, and so I went in for an interview, and that was how I got introduced to Pen 10. Mm-hmm. But I understand that UC they provide tons of opportunities for graduates like myself to sort of break into the sector.
So did you study at UC?
Yeah, so I joined Pen 10 actually when I was in my last year of study at UC. Mm-hmm. Before that, I'd been working at a different company still while studying. Yep. So I sort of went a little bit the other way around, where normally I think you would start studying and then about halfway through you'd get introduced to the industry. But I was lucky enough to get my foot into the door really early on, and so after I'd already had a bit of time in the industry, I thought I should probably go and formalise my education and get a bit more experience.
Mm-hmm. And what did you study?
So I studied a Bachelor of Software Engineering. Mm-hmm. It was just a really general overview of that whole sector. Mm-hmm. And towards the end of the degree is when I started getting more into some of the more specialised subjects. And for me, that was cybersecurity and network engineering.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'll cross over to yourself, Nicole, and ask, can you tell us about the current cyber employment prospects in Australia with Fifth Domain and other opportunities?
I think what we see is there's a lot of demand, obviously, for cyber skills. It's quite clear out there that there is. Particularly in Canberra, we have a really big ecosystem with cybersecurity here that's growing all the time. Previous role, I used to see a lot of demand, particularly for pen testers and things like that. Those roles are quite scarce. We can't train people up quickly enough to meet those needs. So I think it's down to, I think Michelle said earlier, every role has a cyber element in it these days, particularly with digitalisation. I mean, digitalisation was an aggressive agenda anyway for a cost benefits basis. COVID has pushed that even further. So we need to fill those gaps as quickly as possible. And I think it's about raising the awareness of cyber, making it the responsibility of everybody. So I think there are so many opportunities for cyber careers, particularly in peripheral nature. Any job that you have will have a cyber element. And I think even if you don't have that title of cyber in it, you still have a cyber role. Mm-hmm.
And is there anything specific that perhaps Fifth Domain look for in employing cyber personnel?
Definitely. I think it's that eagerness to learn. When you commit to a career in cybersecurity, you commit to continuous learning. Mm-hmm. There is never a day that you're not going to read, you're not going to learn something. The threat landscape moves so quickly that you need to keep up with it, and the only way to keep up with it is to keep on learning. It's not a static kind of role. And the role that you do will change every single day, and the requirements of you will change every single day. So we look for people who are versatile and prepared to take on a challenge and continue to learn. Mm.
Wonderful. Thanks, Nicole. And Stuart, you have touched on this previously, but would you mind just telling us about, your skill set and also what you see as key to success in your role and the dynamics of your team and at CDFS.
Yeah, thank you. My skill set, I could talk about having a degree in IT and a whole bunch of certifications, and yeah, they're all. I was quite happy to get them, and I like to see similar things in prospective employees. But at the end of the day, it takes a bit more. It is that common sense. It's the ability to realise that this isn't a 9-to-5 job. And it's not just digital forensics, this is across the whole of cyber. As mentioned before, if you're looking for a job that is just 9 to 5, this probably isn't it, because there's continual learning, there's research and development. You've got to live and breathe IT and want to look at things. I've always focused more for myself on my ability to lead people. I was the Chief Information Security Officer at the HO for just under 2.5 years. And in total, during that time in the role, I had 538 staff. So you can imagine with that number of people, you don't have the connections you would in a position where you've probably got 2 or 3 people under you. You can understand who they are. So when you take on a new starter, your expectations of that new starter, you know, if they're early 20s, straight from university, and there's probably no other requirements of them. They're not married, there's no children, there's no, you know, real life hassles at that point in time. So, you know, getting to know that person, your expectations are, well, I can get that 20 hours a day that might be needed out of them. But most people disconnect after that first introduction and don't remain connected to the staff. And when you get 538 staff, you can't do that. So it's about empowering the managers below to do the same sort of things, stay connected. So as that person that you employed in their 20s grows and marries, has children, and all the problems that come with that, and illness kicks in and old age kicks in, you've got to reconsider who it is that's working for you. And, you know, when I did have those 500 odd staff, I took on a group of 400 to turn them into operational staff, because what was seen of my 138 staff was it was a truly operational function. And I was asked to take these 400 on to make them operational. And when I approached the senior leaders of those 400 staff, I said, well, how many performance management processes are going on here? And it was nearly 10% of this 400 were undergoing performance management, and the kind of performance management that says there's something wrong with these people. And when I started asking the same sort of question, what do you know about person A that you're suggesting should be out of this organisation? And the manager didn't actually know them. They didn't know that they were going through mental illness, and they had a child with some issues, learning inabilities or disabilities. But once he got to know that, he realised he was more the problem than the staff member was. So it's about staying connected with your staff.
Wonderful, thanks, Stuart. And you know, I'm going to change things up a little bit and put a question to all of you. And that question is, and we've all kind of touched on it a little bit, but I'd like for our audiences to be able to relate to what each of you do. And that is, what does a day in the life of a cyber professional look like? Now, Tom, you're at the very beginning of your career, so we'll start with you and we'll just work our way up from there.
Yeah, sure. So I think, as Nicole mentioned before, every day really is different. That's one of the great things about cyber. And so for me, I think the sort of image that you get of a programmer might be that they spend all day writing code or something like that. But really, very little of my day is spent writing code. A lot of the day is spent sort of thinking about how we might tackle the problems that we have to solve, and how we might break those problems down or try and think about them in a different way. And so a lot of that is really about interacting with my team. It's really easy to get tunnel vision. You work on a problem for a few hours and you just get super frustrated, and you know, your coworker comes over and says, oh, you just missed that thing there, and you think, oh, how could I have done that? And so I think, working with my team and just being humble enough to realise, okay, I need some help here. That's sort of what my day would be.
That's a great way to put it. You know, not being afraid to ask for help when you need it. That's great. Nicole, you have talked about this, but your staff, the other people in Fifth Domain, what does a day in their life perhaps look like?
It's pretty much as Thomas has said, it's quite varied. It depends. We have to respond to the customer need at the time. Sometimes we have a customer come in that has an immediate demand that we have to fill, and we have to change the direction of the team a little bit to come in and fill that bit. From a cybersecurity perspective, in my previous role, I used to act as the CISO occasionally, and that was definitely, there was no typical day in that kind of role. It could start at 6:30 a.m. with a call to the Minister's office to give a brief on things that were happening, and it could end the next day, you know, after 28 hours of being locked up in an incident room trying to figure out what had happened and unwinding that. And it's just that ability, I think, to be able to swap and change between the hats that you wear each day. It's very similar in both roles, where sometimes you have to direct staff, sometimes you have to be the whole servant leadership bit, where you have to move the blockers out of the way for your staff, so the talented people, the truly talented people below you can get on and do their job. It's about harnessing that diversity each day, bringing it together and getting whatever the task is that needs to be done. Oftentimes in cybersecurity, your issues are emergent, so it just means you have to be able to respond to that at the time. But you can't drop your BAU. You know, part of your cyber resilience is making sure that you keep on track and keep that BAU flowing at the same time whilst you're responding to whatever that is. So probably a lot of my role in every day is marshalling expertise, would be the easier way to do it, or as my CTO would refer to it, as herding cats. So
Herding cats. Probably not as easy as herding sheep, but at least cats are smarter. Now, you mentioned incidents. What kinds of incidents are we talking?
Generally, there are, as much as you can talk about them.
Yes.
It would be, you would perceive there was an anomalous behaviour on the network and you'd have to investigate it, or there'd be notification of something on the dark web, I think is something that's been publicly known, and you have to investigate the source of those things. I mean, typically, when you're talking about a cyber operator within your network, if you detect a breach, you've got, say, 90 minutes between breach and exfiltration of data, so you have to react quite quickly to try and shut that down and minimise your damage. So those are the kinds of things where an incident would be, you'd have an alert raised on your network, or you'd notice some behaviour and you have to investigate to see what happens there, and that can be a matter of calling in other subject matter expertise as well and seeing what you need to do to find it out.
Now, speaking of investigate, I'll come to you, Stuart, because that's what you guys do. You examine the breach and, you know, the crime that's occurred. I know that you said that no day is normal in your career, but what does a day look like, or what do some days look like in your profession?
So, there's nothing typical. I could find myself receiving a call overnight and needing to be somewhere on a site. And the site, it could be nasty, it could be a murder, it could be any kind of crime you can imagine, but it could also just be, when I say just, it could be an attack on a network, and it's about getting in and securing the evidence. And you might think, oh, that's also easy, there's just some data, I've got to go and capture it. But considering an organisation may not have laid down an evidentiary process to how data comes in and how data happens in the network, their audit logging may not be of an evidentiary nature, their emails may not be stored correctly, their data might be all over the place. So it's about understanding, what that is. So even walking into any office, you can imagine if I walked into your office and I've got to triage the scene. So same whether it's network forensics, cyber forensics, or it's crime scene forensics. I've got to walk into the unknown just about every day and try and understand it. And you can imagine the petabytes of storage that exists, even in my home. If I pity the poor fool, there's a digital forensic guy that comes to my house. I've got significant storage, significant computing power, and how do you get down to the important factors in an organisation? So if I walked into any of your organisations, there's a person of interest, say it was yourself, it's not automatically your computer I need to go to. You might have a receptionist, you might have an executive assistant. They may be the holder of all the information that you've used to undertake whatever action you've undertaken, whether it's a crime or an intrusion. And how do I get to that? And then, you've got to consider these COVID times. Is it remote acquisition? Am I actually accessing a system from a foreign government or a foreign defence force? They're all considerations, and legally, I follow all legal process. So again, we in our industry, and it tags onto cyber very well. You've got to understand the legal ramifications of what you do. When you're pen testing, you don't do pen testing against. You need to understand who you can attack, who you can go up against. So I found myself going into US defence facilities because the people I've gone in to investigate have contracts with them. And I find myself in US defence facilities. Well, I need to know legal ramifications there. I found myself in Singapore. It's actually illegal in Singapore to take access to somebody else's system, even though in Australia it's quite legal to take remote access to them. So it's about being aware of everything and what you're doing. So like, as you said at the beginning, there is no typical day. I could be just back in the office now and addressing clients' concerns. We are becoming a registered training organisation, so there's a lot of paperwork behind that and setting ourselves up to provide certification to the industry. So yeah, it can be many and varied, and our secure data recovery side of the business. I could be given a hard drive when I get back to work and I need to take the platters off and do a platter replacement or head removal on a hard drive, so it doesn't matter, I'm general manager. At the end of the day, it's all hands on deck, and it comes back to that. It's not a 9-to-5 job. If that's important, I work until it's finished, and that can be 24 hours.
That sounds pretty awesome, Stuart. And I'm glad you mentioned the international aspect of this, particularly the warfare and defence aspect, because that, Paul, really relates to what you do and what you did,
yes,
and also the seriousness of the situation. Cyber warfare law is a personal interest of mine, and I find that it's such an important part of what we all do, yet there's so much to be done. So what does a day in your role or perhaps in your division's role look like?
I was just reflecting on what my day was, and it might be a bit hard to sort of convey to this particular audience, but I did really like what Tom and Michelle and Stuart have...
Nicole.
Sorry, Nicole.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nicole, have conveyed. I think probably what I might answer is just in the context of the people who are watching, because what they've just heard is what could be for them once they've got their first job.
Yes.
And how that goes. So perhaps a day in their life starting today and what the start of next year could look like through the GAP program. They can relate to that specifically. So through UC, there's a number of fabulous courses that qualify for the program. We've got 245 courses, so from Cert 3, Cert 4, diploma, graduate certificate, bachelor's, and through to master's study. So across all of those courses, people can qualify. So if someone is studying those and going into one of those courses next year, then they qualify from the courses. The next thing would be are you an Australian citizen? And that comes back to the security side of things. So that's just a very soft step that we take first to make sure you're an Australian citizen. And then thirdly, from that, there's an application process where we've partnered with DTA, and the applicants can apply there, and we've extended the deadline for that to the 10th of November. So there's basically 2 weeks from now to get those applications in, and we're not just looking to hire or appoint 2 or 5 people, 250 people. So we're looking to get a significant number of applications from that, and then as the candidates are selected from that, they'll know by the end of the year that they've been accepted into that program. And what we'll offer from that is a number of things. So to come back to your security question, work experience, working with defence agencies, so that's military, that's the Australian Signals Directorate, Australian Cyber Security Centre, Defence APS. They will get, and also involvement with defence industry, which I'll come back to. So they'll get that hands-on experience and work experience right from the start. Okay. So the pilot program we've got running at the moment, for example, in their first work experience program, they're actually participating in a cyber labs and a cyber range, which Fifth Domain is under contract to provide us. And they actually come through and go through all different learning modules and assessment modules, right from the very basics of Windows and Linux from a cyber security perspective. And then we also touch on various other fields right through to malware analysis and right through to offensive hacking at the end. So they're going through that experience right now at the moment. Then they'll also get mentoring and assistance, and we'll connect them with people in the Defence Force, and they can get to talk to them one-on-one about what it is like for them in that particular area. So that could be a Navy cryptographics sailor, or a cyber warfare analyst or officer in the Air Force, for example. So that's the sort of the next aspect that we have in the program, to give people that real sense of what their job and their career could be like. The other cool things that we're providing is some financial support to help them buy some technology. Where they put that towards a laptop is up to them. And the most significant thing is paying for. We have a budget limit, but let me just summarise it simply as we'll pay for their course fees for that year.
Wow.
Okay, so obviously some of the master's degrees might exceed our budget limit. We might have to cap the contribution we provide them, but by and large, we will pay every applicant's, participant's course fees for their tertiary study through all of the calendar year. So for someone who wants to have a pathway into cyber, have fantastic support for their study, get access to real hands-on mentoring and advice and guidance through that, access to cyber warfare ranges. The Cyber Gap program, I think, is unparalleled in anything that I've seen in all of my working career across military and civil, and it's available right now for people to apply to.
Yeah, look, that sounds absolutely brilliant. I honestly cannot think of any other program that goes
near those sort of
absolutely.
The aspects that it's touching and
Exactly
the significance
right.
of contribution. And again, as I said in my opening remarks, you don't have to join Defence at the end. We'd love you to, and we're definitely building up our capability there. But
the uniform looks good.
Thank you.
You've got to sell the uniform, right? Uniform. Just waking up and not having to think about what you will wear to work.
There is that advantage, yes.
There's, you know what? The uniform.
It's all the same in the cupboard, yeah?
Yeah.
Throw me off my train of thought now, haven't you?
Oh,
Yes.
sorry. But yeah, you were talking about who can
Yes.
enter, who can apply for this.
That's right.
What kind of person are you looking for?
So the other aspect, which I think Nicole touched on really nicely, I'll use the word tenacity. Right, so she spoke about the resilience and being able to respond, and everything is different every day. But from us, we've got people applying to this. So they might be coming from, a career change. So they may have been in law, or they may have been in humanities, or business analysis, or any other number of fields, and they think, I actually want to take that skill set and apply that cyber flavour, which is another point that you made. So a lot of these courses that we actually have support that. So if it's cyber related, we still want to support you with that. So we don't just need people in hoodies in the basement, as it were, cutting code, as important a part that is. We need a broad workforce and a broad skill set for Defence and Defence's mission, but also across the cyber workforce of the nation. And so this program is absolutely about supporting that and giving it a big oomph.
So I have a friend who is a trained chef who is watching today, and I'm going to recommend that he applies because he's into gaming and all of that, and I think this would be perfect for him. He's looking into transitioning into a career in cybersecurity.
So find one of those courses that might cover on games or data analysis or user interface design, anything that sort of builds upon his skill, and look for one of those courses and apply for that next year, and that would be the avenue to do that. So there's no blocker to that person having a go through that path. Yeah.
So almost anyone and everyone can apply. That is brilliant. Did you want to add anything to that, Nicole?
Oh, I think it's an amazing program, particularly the work experience part. Probably one of the things I'm proudest of in my career was I started a little work experience program. I was in one of the largest in-house IT places in the Southern Hemisphere, and there was this opportunity to bring students from literally across the road and show them what a career in IT looked like, because it's really hard. You go to careers fairs, you don't know what this looks like. So I managed to pop them through networking, software development, cybersecurity, and give them that taste of every single piece of what an IT or cyber career could look like and where they might fit. So they had that pre-idea beforehand to do so, and I think that's critical to getting people in the right roles and things that they will actually enjoy and they have a good fit for.
Yeah, so whether people are in year 12 now or just going through their first or second year through UC, for example, think about this program, think about how we can support you in 2021, and how that'll help set you off on the journey into a cyber career, whatever the employer is.
It truly is an all-encompassing program. It goes from supporting them financially to providing mentoring when they're in their career. So it is fantastic. And I'm so glad, Nicole, that you mentioned your proudest moment, because that is a question that I'd like to put to all of you. And I might start with you, Tom. What are you most proud of?
I think, without a doubt, I would have to say my contributions to open source software. So I think open source is really important, particularly to cyber, for a few main reasons. I can't count the amount of security vulnerabilities that have been fixed thanks to open source. It just really lets people from all different backgrounds, all different skill sets, so many different perspectives are able to look at software and perform different types of analysis, and people can just see what other people can't, and they can fix those vulnerabilities in a secure manner. You know, you don't have to make it public and say, hey, everyone quickly, exploit this while you can before it gets fixed. There's secure channels to quietly say to the developers, hey, by the way, I've found this problem, you need to fix that. And the other reason is because it really, I think, helps sort of put you out there and make you seem a bit more, just like someone who's approachable, or more of someone that you can relate with, rather than just, it's just a big software company who's made this. So, for example, going back to when I used to make game hacks, I would do all of that development open source, and I had people contact me and say, hey, thank you so much for putting this out there. It's let me get into hacking. It's I didn't know where to start before now, but now that I've seen your code, I feel like I can start from here, or I have some idea of where to go. And so to feel like I've been able to contribute to that space and that environment, it's an amazing feeling.
That's really awesome. But just for our audiences who are watching who are not necessarily from a technical background, could you explain a little bit about what open source is?
Yeah, so open source is the concept of sort of writing code out in the open, or making the source code, so all of the software that makes, for example, Microsoft Word operate, or Linux, which has been mentioned before, that's all open source. So anyone on the internet can download a copy of the source code and they can run the program themselves. So there's no hidden code or any secrets that might be hidden away in something that you can't access. It's all out in the open.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tom. And Stuart, how about yourself? What is your proudest moment? Or what are you most proud of?
Most proud of it, it's really about making a difference. You could easily say, making a difference in the life of victims, which has been absolutely fabulous. I've actually, even though it's frowned upon, some of the victims, you end up with lifelong friendships with those victims, because you can't avoid that, especially working in police and alongside law enforcement. You can't avoid getting to know the victims and helping through the situations they've been through. But it's not just that; it's making a difference in the lives of staff and people you work with. I've had staff that have surpassed me so far. Have gone on in their careers way past where I could have ever got, and that's proud. I'm proud of that. We've hired and worked with people of all inabilities, disabilities, ethnicities, you name it, and the challenges of working in different environments with groups such as transgender individuals and getting them into cyber as well. So that sort of work and making a difference there has been the cornerstone of the reasons I do things. But at CDFS where we are, it's working with a team of professionals that aren't just trying to sell a product and trying to find a problem that product will fit into. What we do is walk away from our clients knowing they're in a better place after we've been there. With the services and training and everything else we provide, it's just knowing that they've got a solution that's been valuable to them. If I go back to the work I did in government, I set up a whole of government digital forensics service that supported 43 agencies. So the reason behind that was about staff retention. over the 35 years in IT, I've had so many people work with me and work with so many people, but you lose individuals. You know, all these programs we're talking about, getting the entry-level people into the work we do. A lot of younger people like to jump around roles, so you need to understand why you lose them. And the single factor for me was that they wanted the experience I couldn't provide them. So building a whole of government service, what I was doing was bringing the reason they were leaving to them, so I could retain them. So I've had staff, highly skilled staff, for 15 years in highly technical fields, and it's unheard of in the industry. So it's about bringing the excitement to the role and excitement to the people, and having graduates all say, we want to do the work you do, and we can only take on small numbers at a time, but exciting people about what cyber is into the future, it's what's been good for me.
That sounds pretty good, Stuart. And Paul, how about yourself? I mean, you've had quite a significant career in defence. What are you most proud of so far?
I can think of a couple of things in that, so I'll give a technical and a human answer. Can I do that?
Yes, of course.
So technical was, again, just before coming back into the Air Force, the company that I ran, we had the core of our platforms. We deployed with a shared nothing 4N architecture. And for the 14 years we had that running, never had a single millisecond of downtime. And we had nodes and part of that infrastructure operating across and moving data centres across Australia and the US. To actually have all of your core services that underpinned everything that we ran never go down, despite everything. I'm very proud of with myself and the team for putting that design together and making it work. The CTO of Wikipedia congratulated me on that at a Silicon Valley presentation we did together once. From the people side is really just seeing people develop at a technical level, and then they're brilliant in that regard, but they're not very confident in how to make decisions. And they can be very technical, very hard to get your head around, and they might understand a technical space very well, but then how do they then make that decision, which then has implications? And just seeing those people who are so bright and not used to necessarily making that sort of a decision, develop that decision-making capability, and then from that develop the courage and then the skills, and then know how to do that and communicate how they're going to make a decision, talk about the risks and issues, the mitigation, what they've thought of. And then from that, I've always enjoyed taking my old flying instructor analogy to that, which is people, once they know how to make a good decision, the second part of it is, do you have the information required to make the decision? So first I'd teach them how to make a decision, and then it would be, what information do you need to know to make that right decision? And so it might turn out that the four things they really needed to know, they only knew 3. So they make decision A based on 3 bits of information, and then you teach them, no, you need to be aware of this 4th piece. And then they go, well, this would be my decision. Fantastic. So developing people to make, in a complex technical cyber environment, to make those sort of decisions, I found very empowering, and then people then shoot up from there. So that's, having that as a focus over the last 20 years or so, or 30 years of teaching people to do that has been a very
That's awesome.
prideful thing. Yep.
Yeah, that sounds really great. Now, speaking of, developing people, my next question to you all is, what advice would you give to students wanting to launch a career in cybersecurity, and keeping in mind that
Join the GAP program.
well, keeping in mind that the students do come from a very diverse range of backgrounds, including my friend who's a chef. We also have 2 wonderful work experience students from Hawker College with us at the moment, and they're in college right now. And for our viewers watching from interstate, college is year 10, I believe. Is that correct? Year 10? 11, sorry, 11. They're in year 11. Year 11 and 12 is considered college here in the ACT. And these girls want to find out what they need to do. Of course, we've got university students, people wanting to change their careers, transitionary career launches. What advice would you have for them? And I'll start with yourself, Tom.
Yeah, sure. So I guess, as some of the other panellists have already mentioned, there's just such a wealth of opportunities out there. There's so many different courses you can take, and particularly when you get to the sort of later half of uni, you have a lot more freedom to choose what you want to study. And so I think if you can just get out there and sort of try and expose yourself to as many of those opportunities as you can, it's really going to help you to pick what specific pathway you want to go down in those later years at uni. So, for example, for me, that was network engineering and cybersecurity, but there's maybe 10 or 20 other paths I could have chosen, and I was lucky enough to have had some experience with Pen 10 by that time, and so I knew, I've tried this out, it's definitely something I want to do, so now I can use that information to actually influence my direction at uni a little bit. So yeah, just getting out there and seeing what all the opportunities there are for you is really important for that second half of uni.
Okay, wonderful. And Nicole, how about yourself?
Oh, definitely reiterating what Thomas has said. I think it's important. There are lots of little industry certifications out there you can try before you buy, before you truly commit. Find out what it is that you're good at, what you're passionate about, and commit to that. Because, as I said, cyber comes from all angles. It's a whole ecosystem. So if you've got analytical skills, you're a business analyst, you're a systems analyst, go into that field, but learn about cyber at the same time. Join in on projects that have a connotation with cyber. Be a cyber advocate in whatever role that you're in. And I think you will find naturally your pathway that you want to go in. Not everybody's going to be a pen tester. Not everybody has the aptitude or the attitudes for it. You really need to find your niche and contribute in that way. It might not be the role that you think you're ready for, but try it that way. If you have the means, if you're a young person, offer yourself up for unpaid internships, ask for work experience. It doesn't have to be school run. You'll find a lot of businesses are really open to that, and find the areas where you can actually try before you buy and see if this is the career that you want.
And Stuart, what about yourself?
I'd say probably to entry-level people, take the time, take a breath and experience the opportunities that are put in front of you. Don't believe that you are the best thing since sliced bread, because you're not. Don't believe you know all you need to know, because we'll teach you everything you need to know. Get yourself in a position where you're open to new experiences. And like I said, bring common sense with you. If you think somebody's going to teach you that, they're not. Take the time. You have co-workers, you have team leaders, you have managers, you have every level of manager above you. Take experience from all of those people, and come to it with an open mind about what the opportunities are. I've seen people lock themselves into, this is my path, I'm going to run this race and this is where I'm going to get to. Don't do that. Look for the opportunities. When you think you've learnt everything, ask your boss. No, you haven't. There's subject matter expertise in areas that your boss might have a whole list of things he or she wants you to do. Seek them out. Try and set yourself as a subject matter expert in something. Not early on necessarily, but if there's a focus, or if there's somebody struggling in the organisation you've joined to solve something, see if you can help them. Offer yourself up as those things. I've had people that have come to me and say, what can I do? What is something special I can do? Well, I can point them in a direction, but at the end of the day, choose something. Cryptocurrencies, it's everyone's talking about it at the moment. Understand it and learn it. That's really it. Just be open-minded about your opportunities.
Awesome. Thanks, Stuart. And Paul, how about yourself? I mean, you did mention the Cyber Gap program. This is your chance to give it another plug. But what would your advice be to people wanting to come into this?
Well, it was great to hear of the two young ladies wanting to do cyber as a career, and there's another program that's in my area, which I want the ladies to go and search for on the internet, Women in Cyber. Okay, so in the next couple of weeks there's a Women in Cyber big event, and that's all through online mediums, but from that you'll basically get access to hear from girls that are only just a little bit older than you, right through to some very successful women in the most senior roles. And that's across defence and government and broader industry, all be involved in that. So search for Women in Cyber and look at some of those sessions that are on there. You'll learn a lot about first-hand experience, what those ladies have had, is that they've started right from the start or have actually joined the career laterally. So plug for Women in Cyber, one of my other programs. But back to ADF Cyber Gap program. I guess final plug, thank you for the opportunity. But yeah, the call to action for people who are watching this, if you liked what what I've covered there and you think that we can help you support your studies through next year, there's two ways to find the information out, both of which will take you to the DTA, the Digital Transformation Agency website. The first one is just search for ADF Cyber Gap and you will find it. The whole page will be us looking for that. Or dta.gov.au/cybergap. dta.gov.au/cybergap, and that will take you to the main page as well. From that, there's all of the information and the qualification, and then the apply link is right there on that page as well. It won't take too long to apply, and you've got another couple of weeks to get that in, but don't leave it too late.
Okay. Awesome. And Nicole, just on that, if somebody wanted to apply to Fifth Domain to, I don't know, whether it's for work experience or a particular job, what would you recommend that they do?
Certainly reach out and contact us through our website. We're a small company, we can't take on everyone at once, but I'm really keen to get people in for work experience. I mean, we've just taken on an apprentice that came through my old work experience program, which is pretty exciting. So reach out to info@fifthdomain.com.au and we can certainly have a look at those kind of places. But yes.
That's great. Thanks, Nicole. And Tom, are there any opportunities at Pen 10, or what would you suggest as you got in, through a friend? What would you recommend to people looking for roles? How would they contact Pen 10 and see if there are any opportunities at Pen 10?
So absolutely, there's opportunities at Pen 10. I think we would have some job listings on our website, but I would absolutely encourage people to send an email, even if they don't see something that they quite fit in with in the listings on the website. Send an email anyway. You can send something to pen10hr@pen10.com. Both of the jobs that I've had so far, I didn't quite fit with the job listing, but it doesn't matter. As some of the other panellists have mentioned, you learn pretty much everything on the job. You think you know it all and you don't. So, absolutely, just get in touch, and I'm sure there's a wealth of opportunities.
Excellent. Thanks, Tom. And Stuart, how about at CDFS? How would somebody contact you to find out whether there are any opportunities at your organisation?
We do use all the advertising mediums to get people when we're chasing people, but we're happy for anyone to reach out to us via our website or give us a call if they have certain skills. There's always opportunities and there's always growth. So even contact me directly if my details are provided here. I'm happy to address questions and show what opportunities are available.
That's wonderful, Stuart. All right, so final question for you all. You'll be happy to know I'm letting you all go now. Canberra, why is it a great place for a career in cybersecurity? I'll start with you, Nicole.
I think it's a great ecosystem in Canberra. It's made up of many little small companies such as our own, and Pen 10, it's not so small anymore, but we collaborate and we work together. If we don't have the skill sets, we tend to find them. And that's certainly the same in the CISO community, particularly with the governments as well. They're all in very close contact, they work together, they support each other, they share the skill sets, and I think it's a great community that we have here. And everybody is super cyber aware here compared with other areas as well. It's definitely the topic of conversation. So I'd say there's a great place for opportunities at entry level or any level, and Canberra's probably the place to be for cyber.
Wonderful. How about yourself, Paul? Why Canberra?
Just building upon that, Defence is committed to building our sovereign capabilities further, particularly in cyber, and Defence has a large concentration of its cyber workforce and leadership here in Canberra, and so that naturally radiates out to the industry partners from a Canberra perspective as well. So there's opportunities to work in the industry side or in the Defence APS side or in the uniform or any combination of those for someone through their entire career path. And I'm case in point, you can actually work for all of those different pathways throughout your workforce.
Wonderful. And Tom, why Canberra?
I'd have to reiterate what the others have said. I think there's absolutely far more job opportunities than there are qualified people at the moment. So, and particularly in Canberra, that's the case. But also, it's particularly for software developers. Canberra's small enough that it's a really tight-knit community. So, regardless of where you choose to work, you'll probably see someone from uni or someone who you've worked with before, which is just really helpful when you're getting into a new workplace.
Excellent. And Stuart, last but not least, why Canberra?
Reiterate what everyone else has said. It's a small town with big city opportunities. It's you've got the country feel, and yet you can go for all the same jobs you'd go anywhere else. And I just want to reiterate what Nicole said earlier. You can't do it alone, and Canberra is a perfect place to work in partnership with others. If you call out to any one of our businesses and ask for support, there's a chance that there's a small capability that we don't have in our own shop, but there's no reason we won't call one of our partners and go in collaboration with them to solve a problem that exists in the community. So yeah, it's a small family, small country town feeling with big city opportunities.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining me today.
Thank you, Lena. Well done.
No, you're very welcome. I hope that our viewers got a lot of context out of that. And for anyone who is interested, we will have the contact details of each of the companies and also the Cyber Gap program online for you to get access to. Now we'll stop for a coffee break, a 5-minute coffee break, and then we'll be back with Dr. Abu Barkat Tullah from University of Canberra. He will join you as the host, and I'll be back to host the next panel of entrepreneurs. So thank you so much for your time. Go to the bathroom, go grab a coffee, feed the dog, do whatever you need to do, and we'll see you soon.